Hare Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Janharanjana Yashodanandana Braja Janharanjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivasadi Gaura Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Shri Radha Radhanath ki jai, Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Ramanande. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naranchaivam Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayat. Ashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloker Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Shrinvata Swagata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtanaha Hridiyanta Stohi Abhadrani Vidunoti Suritsatam. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 4, Sati quits her body, text 22. No verse sheets? No? Okay. Naitena Dehena Hare Kritagaso Dehod Bhavenalam Alam Kunjanmana Vrida Mamabhut Kujana Prasangatas Tad Janma Dhig Yo Mahatam Avadyakrit. Text 22. Naitena Dehena Hare Kritagaso Naitena Dehena Hare Kritagaso Dehod Bhavena Lamalam Kunjanmana Vrida Mama Butkujana Prasangatas Tajjanma Dhigyo Mahatam Avadyakrit Naitena Dehena Hare Kritagaso Dehod Bhavena Lamalam Kunjanmana Vrida Mama Butkujana Prasangatas Tajjanma Dhigyo Mahatam Avadyakrit Naitena Dehena Hare Kritagaso Dehod Bhavena Lamalam Kunjanmana Vrida mama bhutkujana prasangatas tajjanmadhigyo mahatam avadyakrit. Naitena dehena hare kritagasho dehodbhavena alam alam kunjanmana Vridha mama bhutkujana prasangatas tajjanmadhigyo mahatam avadyakrit. Naitena dehena hare kritagaso dehodbhavena alam alam kunjanmana Vrita mama bhutkujana prasangatas tajjanmadhigyo mahatam avadyakrit. Naitena dehena hare kritagaso dehodbhavena alam alam kunjanmana Vrida mama bhutkujana prasangatas tajjanmadhigyo mahatam avadyakrit. Na, not, etena, by this, dehena, by the body, hare, to Lord Shiva, krita agasa, having committed offenses, deha udbhavena, produced from your body, alam alam, enough enough, kujanmana, with a contemptible birth, vrida, shame, mama, my, abhut, was, kujana prasangata, from a relationship with a bad person, tat janma, that birth, dhik, shameful, ya, who, mahatam, of the great personalities, avadyakrit, an offender. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. You are an offender at the lotus feet of Lord Shiva, and unfortunately I have a body produced from yours. I am very much ashamed of our bodily relationship, and I condemn myself because my body is contaminated by a relationship with a person who is an offender at the lotus feet of the greatest personality. Please repeat. You are an offender at the lotus feet of Lord Shiva, and unfortunately I have a body produced from yours. I am very much ashamed of our bodily relationship, and I condemn myself because my body is contaminated by a relationship with a person who is an offender at the lotus feet of the greatest personality. Purport. Lord Shiva is the greatest of all devotees of Lord Vishnu. It is stated, Vaishnavam yatha Shambhu, Shambhu, Lord Shiva, is the greatest of all devotees of Lord Vishnu. In the previous verses, Sati has described that Lord Shiva is always in a transcendental position because he is situated in pure Vasudev. Vasudev is that state from which Krishna, Vasudev, is born. So Lord Shiva is the greatest devotee of Lord Krishna. And Sati's behavior is exemplary because no one should tolerate blasphemy against Lord Vishnu or his devotee. Sati is aggrieved not for her personal association with Lord Shiva, but because her body is related with that of Daksha, who is an offender at Lord Shiva's lotus feet. She feels herself to be condemned because of the body given by her father, Daksha. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Mena Tasmaya Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Mena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sarvadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dheena Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Naitena dahena hare kritagaso dehod bhavena lam kunjanmana vidamama butkujana prasangatas tajjanmadhigyo mahatam avadyakrit. You are an offender at the lotus feet of Lord Shiva, and unfortunately I have a body produced from yours. I am very much ashamed of our bodily relationship, and I condemn myself because my body is contaminated by a relationship with a person who is an offender at the lotus feet of the greatest personality. Hare Krishna. So, before I speak, I humbly request the mercy and blessings of all the assembled Vaishnavas. Kindly allow me to say something that is in line with our philosophy and pleasing to the heart and mind. So, for some time we have been reading, this past time, the conversations between, or the cursing of Daksha and Shiva and the conversations thereafter, Sati and Shiva's conversations, and now finally Sati is confronting her father who has blasphemed Lord Shiva in the sacrificial arena. So she has heard of the offense and she has come to her father's home, and she sees that in this fire sacrifice that's taking place, there is no offering taken out for Lord Shiva, and she is greatly offended by this. She knew of the curses previously and the fight, but now that she is seeing it in front of her own eyes, the disrespect, she is greatly offended, and she comes before her father to try and persuade him in some way to give up his offensive mentality. So we see throughout the conversation, as she is confronting her father, as we go verse by verse, the situation is becoming more and more intense and heavy. And in today's verse, we hear words like contempt, shame, offender. These words, if you look at them very carefully, they carry a very serious and heavy weight. This shows the disturbance that Sati is feeling, and the great offense that Daksha has committed that allows the use of such heavy language. But unfortunately, as we see, Daksha is unable to appreciate Sati's good instruction and advice. And this gives a very interesting preview or view of the family dynamic that they have. Very interesting, because it's common mostly that a parent considers themselves to be superior in relation to a child because they are older and they feel that they know more. So they do not sometimes take the good advice of a child or their child that is given. They don't take it seriously. But we understand that a learned person will take good instruction from anyone, no matter who they are. You know, we hear the example that gold can be taken from a dirty place. That does not affect the purity of gold. So similarly, good instruction can be taken from even a lowly person. There is no harm in that. Once, when Hridayananda Maharaj's mother came to see him and met Srila Prabhupada was talking to her. And Srila Prabhupada began to tell her about the story of Kapila and Devahuti. And he was saying that, see, Devahuti is Kapila's mother, but because Kapila is a elevated spiritual personality, Devahuti took instruction from him, even though she was his mother, because he was in a superior position. He was spiritually advanced. So, of course, Hridayananda Maharaj's mother is seeing her son in a certain way, that this is my child and I am his superior. But Prabhupada is saying that, no, your son is very, very intelligent. And she replies, yes, you know, my son he's a good student. So in this way, Prabhupada is saying that he is intelligent and you should listen to him in this case. So similarly, Sati is trying to give some good instruction to her father. She is trying to advise him. But because he is so polluted by envy and his offensive mentality towards Lord Shiva, he cannot appreciate what she is saying. So she is becoming more and more hurt and morose, and now she feels condemned by her relationship with her father. And now she has decided to even give up her body, because her relationship with her father is bringing her so much of distress. She is so offended that she considers herself condemned to be born from this person. She is now ashamed to be his own daughter, because he is so proud of his material status, and now his pride and his envy has even broken his family up. Very interesting. And when we think back to the insults that Daksha initially said to Shiva, you know, he said, looks like a monkey, dances like a madman, associates with unholy people, all of these cutting words. I know, you know, if someone told me that, I'd be very much affected, and I would not be able to tolerate this kind of speech towards me. But we read in the purport that Prabhupada is saying that Lord Shiva is so elevated because of the nature of his consciousness. It is so exalted that these insults do not matter to him, because he is so above this material platform that he left the initial assembly without any retaliation, because he did not care. It's like, you know, just water off his back kind of thing. So yes, Daksha is pointing out all these apparent external faults within Lord Shiva. He doesn't dress properly, he has no home, he's covered in the ashes of cremated bodies, he has snakes and scorpions on his arms. Look at his associates, you know, they're just subtle entities, they don't even have an actual body. But yes, materially speaking, okay, Daksha may have a point, materially speaking. But in this case, it's like, you know, they say you compare apples to oranges. That you are speaking from a material platform, Daksha, but Lord Shiva is not on the material platform. So he cannot be judged in that way. He is the most exalted devotee of the Lord. So for him, the apparent faults that you are pointing out are actually very good qualities. If we just look at the fact that, you know, he lives or in crematoriums, you know, and associates with those entities who have no gross body, the subtle entities, the hobgoblins, the ghosts and such. Why is he with them? Simply to give them mercy. This in itself shows the extent of his compassion and his kindness, because he is willing to happily reside in such a place where such lowly entities live. Why does he reside there? Shri Shri Radharanath ki jai, Shri Giriraj Govardhan ki jai, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So why is Lord Shiva prepared to live in such a place? Because Lord Shiva understands that this environment offers the best possible situation for service to the Lord. That I can genuinely uplift these souls and bring them in some way closer to the Lord at some point. This place offers the most opportunity for service, an endless opportunity actually. There is a disciple of Srila Prabhupada. We know him well. If you had heard his name, it would have been said as Bhavananda. But in his memories or recollections of his time with Srila Prabhupada, he says that no, Srila Prabhupada said his name is Bhavananda. Bhava means, the material world, this realm. So Bhavananda means that person who takes endless enjoyment actually in staying in the material world because it offers an endless opportunity to serve the Lord. Bhavananda. So this is Lord Shiva's understanding that I will reside in these places because they offer the best opportunity for service. So we remember that, Sati was expressing her desire to Lord Shiva to attend the fire sacrifice and festivities at her father's home. And she gave all the reasons for wanting to go. And when she did arrive, ironically, she didn't get involved in the festivities much, that she wanted to be involved in. She didn't even accept the gifts that her mother and sisters offered her. Why? Because she saw that there was no offering set aside for her husband. So she confronts Daksha and she's highly offended. And she's telling him that look at the character of Lord Shiva. He resides in these places just to offer kindness and service. He is faultless. Look at his level of compassion and kindness. How can you have envy towards such a person? And now not only are you not respecting my husband, but you're not respecting such an exalted devotee, someone of such character. Again, she uses such heavy words in today's verse: ashamed, offended, contempt. Imagine saying this to your parent. Imagine saying this to your mother or father. I'm ashamed of you. You're just an offender. But Srila Prabhupada is glorifying her behavior and saying that this is exemplary behavior. Why? Because she is defending a Vaishnav. She is defending the topmost Vaishnav. Because Lord Shiva is described in the verse today as Mahatam. Mahatam is great soul. And we know this word Mahatam as Mahatma from Bhagavad Gita, the great souls. So why is she offended now with her relationship with her father? Because in the verse it is described, Daksha is Mahatam Avadya Krit, an offender against the great personalities. That's quite a lofty title to have, offender against the greatest personalities. And we know, I think Giriraj Swami says that all devotees are great personalities. All devotees are great personalities, mahats or mahatmas. Because anyone who surrenders to Krishna should be considered a great personality. We know from Bhagavad Gita, Sa Mahatma Sudurlabham. And Srila Prabhupada says in the purport to that verse in Bhagavad Gita, he says there again that amongst all Vaishnavas, Lord Shiva is the greatest. So to be an offender at the feet of Lord Shiva is a very serious offense. And thinking in this way, Sati feels so bad because she knows that now this is her father who is such a great offender. And earlier we remember Sati said that, hearing the blasphemy of Lord Shiva, she should give up her body. And if one is able to, when one hears such blasphemy, you should cut out the tongue of the offender, you should kill them and then give up your own life. She speaks like that. But because, and only because Daksha is her father, she thinks, okay, it's inappropriate to kill him. because, this is my father. So then I should, what should I do? So instead of killing my father, I will kill the part of his body that belongs to me, and that is the body that I have received from him. Because she understands that at the end of the day, the body is just a lump of matter. It's just a bag of flesh and blood and all other not so nice things. So in and of itself, the body has no value. So she knows the process of yoga, and she knows that great yogis can leave their bodies at will. So she makes this choice to give up her body. Because she's giving up that body which is contaminated by her relationship with an offender against the great souls by this process. And Srila Prabhupada says in the Prabhupada, why is Lord Shiva considered the greatest Vaishnava? Because he is always absorbed in thought of Krishna. Just for that fact, he is considered the greatest devotee. So that state in which one can always be absorbed in Krishna consciousness, in thought of Krishna, is called Vasudev or Sudasattva. That is a state that is transcendental to the material modes of nature. And when we are completely freed from the influence of material nature, then and only then do you come to the stage of Sudasattva or Vasudev, in which Vasudev or Krishna can be revealed to you. But we read in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, in the first part of the story, there's Gopakumar who is going throughout the whole universe looking for the greatest devotee of the Lord. And he meets so many devotees. He meets Prahlad, the Pandavas, he meets Hanuman, he meets Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva actually guides him further, and eventually, the queens of Dwarka carrying on, he meets the gopis of Vrindavan. And in this book we learn that actually the gopis are the greatest devotees of the Lord. So how can Lord Shiva could be considered then the greatest Vaishnava? And in the commentary, Sanatana Goswami says that yes, the gopis are the greatest devotees of the Lord, that is no doubt, but in the material realm, Lord Shiva resides in this realm. So in this realm, he is the topmost devotee. The gopis reside in the spiritual realm, so they are the topmost there. So like this, Prabhupada recommends that we leave such a place where blasphemy against such great personalities takes place. We should immediately leave this place. Why? Because we, as aspiring devotees and sadhakas on this path, we want to progress in spiritual life. And hearing such blasphemy just takes you backwards. In fact, it does worse than take you backwards. It just makes you fall down and pollutes your own consciousness. And we also realize that, actually, if Lord Shiva wanted to enjoy the whole of material creation, he could have. Why? Because his wife, Sati, or in her other forms of, Parvati and Durga, is in charge of the material realm anyway. But because he has gotten the taste of Krishna consciousness, he has no desire for any material possession in any way. And we follow his example in this way, that as one develops in Krishna consciousness, they should naturally become detached from anything material. So his mood, Lord Shiva's mood, displays this elevated position. But Bhakticharya Swami says that a materialistic person who judges on the basis of pound, shilling and pence cannot recognize the position of a devotee. So we see that Daksha could not recognize Lord Shiva's elevation because he was judging from his material perception, from his material values, because he was blinded by his pride and envy. And in this way, he could not understand that Lord Shiva was transcendental to material nature, because he himself, Daksha, placed value in the material nature. And if Lord Shiva wanted to, he could have had material enjoyment. Because why? He is the husband of Maya Devi, of Durga. So who can enjoy material nature better than him, being the husband? But he Even though he has the greatest access to material enjoyment, he has no desire because his attachment to Krishna is much greater than anything. So in this way, we should understand how should we as devotees use renunciation. We have to use it for Krishna. That is actual detachment, not repression or suppression or denial of your material desires, but a channeling of your desires into service. This process is called, or we follow what is called Yukta Vairagya. We do not reject anything. We do not reject anything. We know the Mayavadis, they simply try to abstain from sense enjoyment. They just deny and say no and abstain. But a devotee transcends their desires by using them in service. They go one step higher. Srila Prabhupada gives the example, how can you identify a Mayavadi? If you give a Mayavadi money, he puts his hands behind his back and says, no, I don't want. And how do you identify a devotee? If you give a devotee money, he puts his right hand out to take it, and he puts his left hand out. Because devotees are not afraid of anything. They accept anything to be used in the service of the Lord. We know in the Shikshastakam, Lord Chaitanya says, Na danam, na janam, na sundarim. I do not want a good birth or wealth, a beautiful woman, any of these things. But a devotee understands that if these things are there, I will accept them. And I will use them for Krishna. I will accept the janam, the danam, the sundaram, anything that I can be used for Krishna, I will take it. I don't want it for myself, but if it's there, no problem. Once when Srila Prabhupada was in India, a very wealthy businessman came to see him. And he sat in front of Prabhupada and he said, Swamiji, I have this factory here in Delhi, I have this business in Mumbai, I have this, everywhere, all around India. He had so many different businesses and all of these things. And he says, but Swamiji, I have all of this, but I can't sleep at night. And Prabhupada looked at him and said, well, that's why you can't sleep. But you give all of these things to me, and then you can have a good night's sleep. It's okay. Then Prabhupada turned and Gopal Krishna Maharaj was sitting there and he said, take his address down. Take his address. And the man got a little shocked. He was like, no, Swamiji, I can come see you at any time. It's okay. Prabhupada says, no, that's fine. You can come see me at any time, but I should also come to see you at any time. So, just take his address. And he tried to refuse, and Prabhupada says, no, I will relieve you of your problem. Just give the address. And, well, he had to give his address. So in this way, devotees are not afraid of anything because they know everything can be used to satisfy Krishna in some way. And as we read this pastime, we see the consequence of offending great Vaishnavas. Daksha was envious of Lord Shiva and he assumed that he was superior simply based on his bodily material identification. Because he placed value in that, he thought that he was superior to Lord Shiva. But Lord Shiva is very different, even among the demigods. He is not on the same caliber. In the Padma Purana, Krishna says that one who worships me but does not give proper respect to Lord Shiva is an offender. And we know that Krishna will forgive an offense against him, but not so much against a devotee. And in the purport, Prabhupada says how to follow the example of Sati, that we should be extremely careful of those people who do not respect the Lord's devotees, who just criticize and blaspheme them from a material point of view. Because we see how serious an offense it is when pure Vaishnavas, elevated devotees, are offended. It is materially and spiritually detrimental. You will lose your good fortune and you will lose any piety that you have. So we must carefully in ourselves look at our thoughts and our consciousness and understand, from my thinking, what is born of ego, what is born of anger, what is coming from material identification, what is coming from my association with this material body and the material nature. And we must be very careful to try and distance ourselves from these things in our mind, lest we ourselves commit offenses. Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes in his book called Bhakti Aloka he gives the criteria to talk about others. He says, anyone who speaks about others while being influenced by pride, anger, desire for distinction or lust are offenders at the lotus feet of Bhakti Devi herself. You are an offender at the feet of devotion personified. So anyone who speaks about others whose heart is still influenced by any of these qualities, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that they should not speak at all in any capacity. Only those who are freed from these qualities may speak about others. And ironically, when you are freed from these qualities, you will not speak about others in any offensive way. So, we should take the example and understand. We should see the emphasis that Daksha has placed on his material prosperity and his body, and understand that it comes down to choice. What are we doing with our time, and what are we doing with our consciousness? In a class given by Pankajangari Prabhu, he makes the point and says that we may or we may not get Krishna Prema, but we don't care. We may or we may not even see Krishna in this life, but we don't care. It doesn't matter. Why? Because all we have is this moment now with us. So what are we doing with this moment? What are we choosing to do? Are we in this moment giving ourselves to Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement? That is the question we should ask ourselves. So we should understand and introspect and consider our own consciousness and thoughts and think, where am I placing value in my life? What do I hold valuable as a devotee? And see where that takes me. Because this will influence our consciousness for or against progress in spiritual life. So I will conclude by reading a prayer written by Bhakti Tirtha Swami in his book called The Beggar, Volume 2, entitled Crying Out for Mercy. So this chapter is called One Should Never See the Lord's Servants as Ordinary. So this is a prayer that he has written. My dear Lord Govinda, sometimes when I reflect on the sages, acharyas, and saintly personalities, I wonder why we offer such reverence to what sometimes seems to be ordinary persons. Like us, these saints are born, experience sickness, grow old, and then die, and most of them meet many challenges throughout their lives. Sometimes they even seem defeated by these challenges. If these saints are so special and so dear to you, why do so many ordinary events occur in their lives? Why do they meet so many challenges, and why do they appear to suffer so intensely? Lord Govinda chuckled. Even when I personally descend, I seem to take on the ordinary activities and characteristics of the material environment. However, I have very strongly stated in the Bhagavad Gita that only fools believe that I am constrained by ordinary laws and circumstances when I descend. Even my body, though appearing to be human, never has human limitations, but fools never understand my supreme dominion, even when I readily display it. The same is true of my pure devotees. When my pure devotees enter these material universes, they powerfully represent me in so many respects. These devotees make themselves available even to the lowest of demons, just as I do, because their sublime intent is to use every means possible to infiltrate these material insane asylums and release all of the prisoners. It is a great offense to think that these devotees are like ordinary inmates of the material world. Not only can such an offense literally stall one's spiritual life, but an individual who thinks this way may even lose the spiritual credits he has attained over lifetimes. Lord Govinda continued, not only are my pure devotees so merciful that they should never be offended, but even the servants of these unalloyed devotees are extremely special. It is not obvious that those who represent an important project or service Is it not obvious that those who represent an important project or service are themselves very important also? When one offends my pure representative, he is also offending me. Likewise, when one offends the servants of my representative, this indirect offense to my ambassador is equally offensive to me. Let us take the converse, for instance. If one serves and honors my representative, is he not also serving me? If you study this phenomenon closely, you will see why some souls advance rapidly while others hardly advance at all. In any case, those who think that I, my representatives, or their servants are ordinary inmates of these hells are assuredly prolonging their sentences by numerous lifetimes. Of course, this is nothing new. When I sent Jesus the Christ of Nazareth to the earth planet, I had him take birth in a barn and caused him to wander as a scantily clothed person. My representative Muhammad was totally illiterate. Likewise, Lord Buddha, although a prince, could not do any of my work until he became a beggar. The same is true of my great devotee Lord Shiva, who lived under a tree. Similarly, although the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan were initially situated in royal professions, in order to serve my mission more fully, they had to renounce their luxuries and associate with ruffians. Eventually, they too had to live under trees. When I make my own appearance, I also come alternately as a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Sudra. I sometimes even take on the form of lower animals to increase the chances of liberation of souls in these species and to increase my own enjoyment. Still, in all cases involving myself or my pure representatives and their servants, our activities in this material dungeon are solely for the purpose of rescuing others, to give maximum assistance and guidance to material prisoners. We take on many qualities and activities of this environment. Still, the envious and devious nature of the unfortunate hardcore materialists prevents them from recognizing my greatness or that of my agents. Because they misuse their own abilities and greatness to exploit and manipulate others, they try to trivialize my glorious love, humility, compassion, and selfless personalism and that of my helpers. They consider these qualities to be foreign and mundane. My great devotee Srila Madhva Acharya reiterates this truth by saying, "From Lord Brahma down, all living entities engaged in the service of the Lord are extraordinary." Madhva Acharya knew, as all liberated souls do, that although my devotees may sometimes appear to suffer, this is not actually the case. As my expert servants, the demigods explain in their prayers to me, incessant transcendental bliss flows in the minds of those who have even once tasted but a tiny drop of the nectar from the ocean of my glories. Such exalted devotees forget the tiny reflection of the so-called material happiness produced from the material senses of sight and sound. Free from all desire, such devotees are the real friends of all living entities. Offering their minds unto me and enjoying transcendental bliss, these souls are always expert in achieving the real goal of life. Srimad Bhagavatam 6.9.39. Still, the gross materialist cannot appreciate that I often put my great servants into humble circumstances so that their own beauty and divine power will radiate even more. By my divine arrangement, I allow them constantly to create order out of chaos with their determined poise and detachment. In this way, they help others understand the beauty and power of perseverance and strong faith. For this reason, I almost invariably require my pure devotees to struggle against severe and formidable obstacles, so that humankind can see how, despite the greatest of traumas and difficulties, my pure devotees remain loyal to me and know only me as their refuge, just as I know only them. Just a look at my exemplary son, Srila Prabhupada. Did I not start his mission in a most humble and precarious way? I sent Srila Prabhupada out of the holy land of Vrindavan at the advanced age of 69, and only with a few dollars in his pocket. His divine grace knew no one in the West, although this part of the world has become his major field of preaching. Prabhupada wasn't even expert in the foreign language he had to use in writing his books. In addition, his health was frail. Yet I directed him from within to go to some of the planet's most degraded places and interact with some of society's greatest misfits and upstarts. To show the rare compassion of a pure devotee, I allowed Srila Prabhupada to dwell among many lost souls in order to lead them painstakingly out of their material existence. Thus, anyone who considers me, my representatives, or their servants to be ordinary conditioned souls is condemned to reside in the material spheres of hell for many lifetimes. On the other hand, all those living entities who somehow take full shelter of these secret agents of minds will surely be rescued in the near future. Similarly, those who serve or assist such agents in their commissions are also up for parole and should in no way be considered ordinary, insubordinate inmates. Yes, when I or my pure representative descends, we certainly appear to be of this world. In fact, to blend in and accomplish our mission, we deliberately appear to eat, sleep, mate, and defend, just like regular residents of this planet. But nothing could be further from the truth. In the same way that demigods from the heavenly planets see the residents of Vrindavan as having 4 arms like the pure souls of Vaikuntha from time to time, these earthly residents who have eyes to see will get glimpses of my representatives' transcendental forms and attributes. They will be deeply touched and sometimes moved to surrender by such an encounter. My dear son, Lord Govinda concluded, you must become fully selfless and humble, overflowing with compassion and devotion. This will help you to fully appreciate and gaze upon the actual pure form of my extraordinary agents, and will also allow you to become such an agent yourself. Beloved, I will continue to come myself as I have in the past, and will send many humble and accessible agents. But will you continue to be clouded by lust and greed, and thereby deprive yourself of these precious opportunities? Or will you realize that anything connected with me, my message, and my mission is never ordinary or to be taken for granted? Please try to recognize the rarity of those individuals known as devotees. Also try to understand that each encounter with one of my agents or his servants should be appreciated and accepted as a most powerful expression of my love. Please position yourself better to receive this unconditional love of mine. It has always been available, yet again and again you have deprived yourself of its sweetness by continually doubting and delaying. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Any comments, corrections, additions, subtractions? None? Grantara, Srimad Bhagavatam. Oh, sorry. One question.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. That was a really amazing class. So, it was so filled. I mean, I was just looking at the time, and by like 8:10, you'd covered so many points, and it was so nectar, and I was just thinking, when is the mercy going to stop? So that was really nice. I was just thinking about, you tied in Lord Chaitanya to Lord Shiva, a little bit like in the middle of your discussion. You tied in Lord Chaitanya, it was somewhere in the middle. And I was just thinking about, the relationship between Lord Chaitanya and Lord Shiva. They're both Patita Pavan. And Lord Shiva is situated as the greatest devotee. And Lord Chaitanya has given us the opportunity to imbibe that same spirit by engaging, as you were saying, in the Sankirtan movement. I find the first time I went on Harinam with Harinam and Prabhu in the city, the smells were a bit strange, and I was thinking, this isn't a place for Vaishnav, because we have these standards of cleanliness. But there was so much mercy there, and I was just thinking about the fact that this is how we get the mercy, by going into the places where the most degraded people are, where the most degraded situation is taking place, and in that way we can get so much mercy from Lord Chaitanya. And that's a lesson that we can imbibe from Lord Shiva. And even Sati, who went to her father who was the most degraded, and she did the needful. Yeah, so we should try and do the needful, and carry on in Srila Prabhupada's service like that. Hare Krishna.
Yeah. The lowest of people need the highest of mercy. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaura Premanande.